Paul Levesque McMahon is about to give the golden ticket to this WWE superstar, while another will continue to get the golden shovel. The latest between AEW and CM Punk's ugly divorce. In 5 days, Endeavor has announced the WWE we once knew will be gone forever. Raw, Smackdown, and Collision's ratings are in. I've got the numbers. We'll talk about what drew and what did not. All of this and more discussed in today's Amped Up podcast for Thursday, September the 7th, 2023. Grab your coffees, smash them ups, lock in the earbuds. Let's get amplified. And before we kick this pod off, I'm going to go ahead and have you guys super kick that like button. Go ahead and smash that up wherever it is on your screen. Not only does it show support to the channel and help out the algorithm, but it tells BC you're fully amplified for today's podcast. So I appreciate each and every single one of you guys that goes above and beyond, especially my gold unit, my channel members. I'm looking at the updated list of my gold channel members, and let me tell you, man, channel members are running deep. We legit. Badass, my channel members. Appreciate you guys. Now let's start with the top story of the day. Paul Levesque McMahon is incredibly high on this WWE superstar, and her name is Zoe Stark. Now I know you're thinking, BC, no offense, man, but your sources got it wrong on this one. She just lost clean on Monday, passed out. I know. Bear with me, I'll explain. First and foremost, I've been hearing from day one that Paul Levesque McMahon was incredibly high on Zoe Stark. That was from day one. I am now hearing that that's about to be skyrocketed. The ante is going to be upped, and that's going to kick into overdrive. The word that I was told is her booking is going to be heavy for the rest of the year. That was the exact word sent to me via text by somebody who knows a lot more in this industry than BC. And if that is the case, I know a lot of the wrestling world is more than okay with that. If this golden ticket, that I'll put in air quotes, if this golden ticket is going to go to Zoe Stark, there's a lot of the fan base that is more than okay with it. They feel she's a good wrestler, she's got good mannerisms, and she's more than decent on the microphone. However, I also know there's a part of the audience that thinks she's just decent in the ring, not the greatest of mannerisms, and has a lot of work to do on the mic. So whichever side of the fence you may reside on, there's one thing I think most of us can agree on. There's a ton of potential in Zoe Stark. But there's a few issues that need to be discussed before we can just say she's getting some type of a rocket. Number one, if you think she's going to be booked anywhere near Charlie Flair status, absolutely not going to happen. In fact, if Monday is any indication of just how clueless this company can be, including Paul Levesque McMahon, if Monday is any indication, they're going to have a harder road trying to make Zoe Stark appeal to the masses. Because it looks like their trajectory for Zoe, their path to get her super over, is by linking her up in a tag team with Shayna Baszler. Now, most of us respect Shayna Baszler, no question. But first problem, you have a non-existent division. So no matter what team you have, if the division is non-existent and everybody knows it, even Chelsea Green, one half of the tag title holders, and her tag team partner, who holds the other title, by the way, just claimed herself to be a champion, never even won the title. That tells you something. But Chelsea Green even made reference to this curse of the women's division. It's more than a curse. It's a non-existent division. It doesn't matter what team. You can have Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey. You could have Sasha Banks and Bayley. It wouldn't matter. If there's no division, it doesn't matter what teams are there. If the company doesn't care about it, it doesn't matter what two people you're throwing together. That's the first big obstacle. Secondly, people are going to look at this as a bootleg version of Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler. Because a lot of people are still trying to find out what is a Zoe Stark. And you're going to use this as the time to show everybody. Well, if they weren't drawn to Zoe in this whole Trish Stratus-Becky Lynch feud, I don't think Shayna Baszler tagging up with Shayna in a non-existent division is going to help much. I totally understand if you look at them, they're badass, they're fierce, they're built like brick houses. I get it, right? Together you're thinking they can dominate. But again, dominate who? Who are you dominating? Chance and Carter? Chelsea and Piper? Who are you going to throw together? You're going to bring Dana Brooke back from NXT to the main roster? Are you going to throw Dana Brooke in there with Candice LeRae? Who are they dominating? There's no division. This is the same problem that Sasha and Bayley ran into, or Sasha and Trinity, or even Ronda and Shayna. Paul Levesque McMahon is thinking, I'll just put Zoe with Trish, and when that's done, I'll put Zoe with Becky. There's got to be a better way to do this. I'm on board with rocketing Zoe Stark. It's sink or swim, right? If she fails, she'll be the first to say, my fault, I'll go back to the drawing board. I'll do better next time. If she succeeds and she swam to shore and she built a foundation, a whole plaza on that shore, well, then she can give herself a pat on the back, and most likely a lot of fans are going to be drawn to her that weren't originally. It's sink or swim. I'm okay with giving her this opportunity. I'm just asking you do it right. And for those that are saying, well, BC, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves, I don't think they'll pair her with Shayna just because Shayna passed her out. You got to know how this company is ran, just like I said in my review. When Zoe passed out to Shayna on Monday night, and I put out that review the next morning, I told you guys, it looks like they're going to do some tag team here because Shayna gave daps to Zoe. At least you did better than Ronda. And I said, knowing WWE, they're going to form this little union, right? This tag team. And sure enough, WWE.com, they put up that clip and they literally said, it looks as if a partnership was formed between Zoe and Shayna on Monday night. Why would they word this whole situation that way? It looks like a partnership was formed on Monday night. From Shayna just showing her some respect and giving some daps, now all of a sudden it's a partnership? No, this looks like this is exactly what they're told to say because this union is already in the works. Don't be shocked if by this Monday you're already seeing Zoe Stark and Shayna Baszler in a tag team. And I expect them to be dominant, but don't be shocked if it falls to the wayside and fails miserably before it even gets off the ground. Just like Trinity, Fatu, and Sasha Banks, unfortunately. Just like Ronda and Shayna, unfortunately. And this is only the foundation for what's to come to with the WWE and how they're going to utilize Zoe with Shayna. We've seen this in the past, many times. But one instance that stands out is Charlie Flair after one of her hiatuses. She comes back and they stuck her with Asuka. They wanted Asuka to give Charlie some rub. Now at the time, Asuka was already the Raw Women's Champion and she was holding the hand of Lana, trying to give Lana a rub. When Charlie came back, they kicked Lana to the curb and they wanted Asuka to hold the hand of Charlie so that she could get some type of good reaction so that people would care about Charlie Flair coming back. And it was all set up just to skyrocket Charlie and stifle Asuka, even though she was the champ. And that's exactly what happened. Charlie went on to main event more Manias or hold more championships, and Asuka was back at catering. Well, this is one of those things where Zoe will be catapulted eventually from this little union with Shayna, and Shayna will be the odd person out with nothing when it's all said and done, unfortunately. But this is all going to be the foundation for Zoe. I just don't think it's the right way to go. I say Paul Levesque McMahon is doing this the wrong way. If you're trying to skyrocket somebody and you think that just stuffing her with somebody like Shayna in a non-existent division is going to help matters, I think you're sorely mistaken. And I think Paul Levesque McMahon has to rethink this. I would not put her in a tag team with Shayna. As much as the visual of Zoe and Shayna looks cool and could be really cool, there's no division. It's only so far you can go, and nobody is going to care about it. So you're trying to skyrocket somebody, but doing it this way is going to have the adverse effect. Nobody's going to care about Shayna or Zoe. But again, Paul Levesque McMahon is incredibly high on Zoe Stark right now, and she is being heavily booked going forward. Again, you can't help but laugh, sadly, if heavily booked means just aligning with Shayna Baszler. Because I know they're trying to book Shayna, or at least maybe they believe they're trying to book Shayna like a badass, but the way they're doing it, nobody cares. You gotta do better. That's the thing. I have no problem with Zoe getting the catapult. A little bit of the rocket, right? Even if it's a piece of the rocket. I have no problem with that. But how this company goes about doing it is just mind-boggling. Now, on the flip side, there's somebody that Paul Levesque McMahon, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, is not high on. And I don't know if that golden shovel can dig any deeper. Can Drew go any lower than the booking he's getting right now? And it is so sad, but that is who we're talking about. Drew McIntyre. And Paul Levesque McMahon is just not high on this dude. And when he was getting decent booking, or at least some spotlight, obviously that was from Vincent Kennedy McMahon. But with Paul Levesque McMahon, just doesn't see much in him. And that's sad because we all like Drew. We want the best for Drew, and we want the best possible booking for him. But it was sad when he first came back to WWE. You really thought they were going to do something special, that Levesque McMahon was going to put him in a good spot, bring him back as a heel, and make us care about what he's doing. Instead, Drew McIntyre came back in the same situation he left with. Right back to the mid-card, going for the mid-card title. And he lost! Gunther beat him. And now Drew McIntyre is joking around backstage with Flip Flops Flanagan. He's in regurgitated matches with the Viking Raiders with Scooter McGee. He is arguing with Kofi Kingston backstage with Matt Riddle. And now Drew McIntyre finds himself in rough waters, and Paul Levesque McMahon is not throwing him a paddle or a floaty vest. Instead, he's waving around his golden shovel. But how much lower can you drag Drew McIntyre down? I mean, this is as sad as it gets. A placement holder for when Randy comes back, right? The new stepfather of Matt Riddle, or at least that's what Matt Riddle thinks of Randy. And Drew McIntyre, they have nothing. And we're going to see every week this weird thing with Viking Raiders and one third of New Day. And obviously, Big E, much love and respect to him, and we hope the best on his recovery. Not even coming back to wrestling, that's secondary. The fact that he can walk and enjoying life, that is just epic. But even Xavier is once again hurt. So this Monday, it's just Kofi. And it's a circus. Did you guys see Monday night? It was a circus. Literally a circus. The match itself was a tornado tag between the Vikings, Matt Riddle, and Drew Snoozentyre. And then Kofi Kingston by himself hits the ring. He accidentally hits Matt Riddle. Then the Viking Raiders throw him into Drew Matt. They pick him up like he's a nerd at a party and he's being thrown out of the party. DJ Jazzy Jeff from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Remember every episode, Uncle Phil would throw out Jazzy Jeff. Kofi Kingston just gets picked up. He gets lawn darted into McIntyre. So Kofi comes out and totally takes out the team of Riddle and Drew. And then the Viking Raiders win 10 seconds later. I mean, everybody looked like a clown. And then they go backstage and they're bickering some more. This is Drew McIntyre. A couple of years ago, he was winning the heavyweight championship. So am I shocked that I am hearing that Paul Levesque has nothing for Drew and he's not a priority? That was the exact quote, by the way. I don't know if I already gave you guys the quote that I got. But he is not a priority in WWE. Well, you didn't have to really convince us too much on that. We see that he's not a priority. That's pretty evident. But to know that that's literally how they feel about him, in those walls, that's sad, because there's some talents where you're befuddled on how you can screw it up. Bobby Lashley is one of those guys. Drew McIntyre is one of those guys. AJ Styles, there's some people that you don't even know how you could possibly begin to book them poorly. Bobby Lashley is another one too, by the way, man. I'm not hearing anything about Paul Levesque and how he feels about that. If I ever got, anything concrete, I would obviously tell you guys. But he's another one where you just got to watch his booking, because even though they aligned him with the Street Profits and they're the street business, I guess, they're tweeners. We don't know if they're faces, heels, the company, we're told anyway. My people are telling me that internally they're looked at as heels. You put them in front of the audience, they play it up as if they're faces. The red cups fall down. The Street Profits are giggling again, and it's all about fun and games and smiles. Bobby Lashley is smiling. If not done correctly, this could be worse than having Shelton and Cedric rejoin Bobby Lashley, which, by the way, I was okay with the original Hurt Business. I felt that ended way too soon. But it's clear that just throwing Shelton and Cedric back with Bobby was not going to work. But this will be even worse if you don't do this right. And what we saw Friday was nothing out of this threesome. Nothing out of Bobby and Street Profits together. It was cringeworthy. Anyway, it's sad, but Paul Levesque McMahon is not too high at all on Drew McIntyre, and even worse, he's not even a priority in the company. This just over a month ago, 2 months ago, we were talking about Drew possibly AEW, or when Drew comes back to WWE, they're going to have something epic for him because he wasn't happy, and they're going to finally book him like a main eventer we care about. And if you would have told me that this is the way Drew would have returned, I would have said you've fallen on your dome piece a couple too many times as a kid. But this is how he's being booked. And before we move on, a little bit of breaking news for you guys, man. We have a date on the WWE UFC merger closing. Finally official to the public. Endeavor Group Holdings, Inc. and WWE will become an official merger under TKO Group Holdings on September 12th, guys. The deal is official to the public. That is in 5 days. WWE will no longer be under its own umbrella. Vince McMahon will no longer have the utmost power in WWE. It will now be Ari and Endeavor that has 51% of the ownership, and Vince McMahon will now have a boss. That'll be September 12th. WWE no longer on the stock by itself. It'll now be under TKO Group Holdings, Inc. So the WWE that we once knew, that is gone forever, guys. It won't even be on the stock market. Nothing like that, man. TKO Group Holdings. This is big. And this is where you're going to start to see the flywheel take shape, right? Endeavor. They're going to start the layoffs. Whoever's left inside of WWE headquarters, employee-wise, will be first. And then I expect that to leak into the talent. I know that Nick Khan said we don't expect that initially. But if they're trying to reach upwards of $70 to $100 million and cut costs, well, WWE already tightened up the ship before they merged with Endeavor. They already laid off a bunch of employees, a shit ton, over 100. And then they merged the departments, guys. So what more can they ravage through employee-wise? Eventually, you're going to start laying off people you actually need. And that's why I'm saying you're not going to get more than 10 to 20 million from employees and such. You're going to have to look elsewhere to get another $50 million in cut costs. And that's where you have to start looking at talent roster releases, unfortunately. And I don't think it's just going to be NXT, by the way. It's going to be a lot of main roster talent. So this is breaking news. September 12th, the deal is going to close and be official to the public. This is massive. Moving on. Let's talk it, AEW. But let me get a big swig of coffee first, and we'll get into this next topic. Up next, we will talk ratings. Monday Night Raw, Smackdown, Collision. I got all the numbers for you guys. How many viewers tuned into these shows? As for Dynamite, as of the recording of this podcast, Dynamite's numbers are not out yet. But I have Raw, Smackdown, and Collision. And for those that don't want to talk the ratings. They don't want to talk numbers. BC, it's 2023. They don't matter as much, man. They do. They matter more today than ever before in terms of advertisers, in terms of demos, to really zone in on who exactly is watching your product live. But more than anything, it tells us who is enthusiastically watching professional wrestling today, live on their big screen TVs. None of this cord cutting, none of this DVRing it for later, none of this watching the highlights the next day on platforms like this. No, there was a reason to watch this live, because still the majority of your audience wants to watch live. The NFL will tell you that. Their numbers are up way over 10% in the last couple of years. Well, BC, that's football. Nothing can beat football. That is BS. Professional wrestling was putting the whooping on the NFL back in the late 90s into the early 2000s. Putting a whooping on the NFL because the product was hot. It was must-see TV. So absolutely, you can at least compete with football. That's at the bare minimum. Numbers, man, the ratings tell us. Are people enthusiastically watching pro wrestling, or can they just DVR it for later? Can they just watch highlights and not even watch the whole show? Do they not have to be watching prime time? That's the problem. So numbers tell us that, and they've been going the opposite way over the last several years. So I will try to rip the Band-Aid off in this next segment. I'll try to go fast, but stay amplified and efficient when speaking about these numbers. But I'll rip the Band-Aid off. I'll try to go through this pretty fast. And then we'll get over to the AEW CM Punk situation, the latest. And it's a wild accusation levied down by Jim Cornette, and then head of talent relations has a response, and then it just gets all haywire. We'll talk about that, man. But first, I'll start with Monday Night Raw. Monday Night Raw this week pulled in. Now, this was on Labor Day, okay? This was a holiday edition, and this was going against what is called stiff competition with college football. And Monday Night Raw actually went up 30 to 35,000 viewers. We're still waiting for a slight adjustment, but it's going to be between 30 and 35,000 viewers, guys. Monday Night Raw pulled in a 1.7 from last week's 1.67. So 1.67 last week, 1.7 this week. That's not a big jump, I understand. But this is what everybody says. It's a holiday, BC. That's the excuse. That's why it's really bad numbers. Or really stiff competition, BC. College football, right? It's not about competition. It's not about holidays. It's not about presidential speeches or debates. It is about, is your product good enough for viewers to want to watch that instead? That's the problem. Over the last several years, it has not been. But this will show you that holidays doesn't mean you're going to lose 100,000 viewers. Stiff competition doesn't mean you're losing 75,000 viewers up front. They actually went up nearly 35,000 viewers. Doesn't matter if it's not a lot. They went up on a holiday stiff competition Monday. And this wasn't even a good show, by the way. A couple of decent things. A good main event with Gunther and Chad Gable, and The Miz annihilating John Cena. You just couldn't see it. A couple of good segments and or a match or two. But other than that, the show was easily missable. But it was enough to be a little better than last week, people thought. Because it went up on a holiday edition. So that's why I say enough with those excuses. Enough with it. You just have to give people... this was a post-payback show, so I'm most likely when I break down the quarterlies, I'm probably going to see the heavier part of this rating was in the first 2 hours. Post-payback, people want to see what was up at the pay-per-view, what's the fallout. I understand. But it's still going up against stiff competition on a holiday, and they went up 35,000. That's the good news. The bad news, they're pinned at a 1.7. This is still atrociously bad. And you have Monday Night Football starting up next week. And they were just at 1.67 last week. And a couple weeks ago, they dipped into the 1.5. Wasn't even 1.4, I believe. And this is, maybe it was 1.5. But it was not long ago they actually dipped into the 1-4s. My point is, this is all without Monday Night Football stiff competition. What are you going to do when football comes back? If you're already around 1-5, 1-6, 1-7, are you truly going to dip to 1-2, 1-3, 1-4? Are we going that low as the new normal during football season? That's the problem. A lot of people said, oh, BC, they're going to go back to 2.5 once football is done. I said, 2.5, they're going to have trouble getting back to 2 million consistently, and they never did. SummerSlam, I think they may have hit it the week before, maybe after. Other than that, they haven't been able to get back to 2 million. I told you guys this was the problem. No more fear of missing out. No more FOMO. When you miss 1, 2, 3, 5 weeks in a row and you realize that nothing's right, you didn't just evaporate. The world didn't end because you missed wrestling a few weeks. You start to realize I can miss this show, save myself a bunch of time, not be put to sleep by the garbage, and I don't even miss anything. I can tune in a month, 2 months later down the road, and I'm still getting Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens versus the Judgment Day in some weird, stupid main event. That's the problem. There's no reason to tune into these shows every single week. It's the same regurgitated BS, lackluster to the highest of measures, and regurgitated to the most amplified of extremes. And that's why you're seeing this number at a 1.7 before Monday Night Football. 1.6 some odd last week. 1.5 a couple weeks ago. And now, Monday Night Football is about to begin. Moving on, SmackDown. SmackDown this week went down with John Cena's return. 2.44. That is down over 200,000 viewers from a 2.65 last week. Now, again, that was going into... this was the payback. That was the tribute episode, though. 2.65. That was a little higher than their normal average because a lot of people wanted to just kind of grieve out and see the tribute, be a part of the tribute with Bray Wyatt and Terry Funk. So that boosted to a 2.65. Not even John Cena could save that. I think without Cena, you probably would have saw, based on my early trajectories, a 2.32 sounds pretty fair. 2.32. I think John Cena easily brought in $1 to $1.30,000 extra viewers. So he still did draw, but they did lose over 200,000 from that tribute show last week. 2.44 for SmackDown. That is still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, nearly 7 times what Collision brought in. Collision this week brought in 345,000 viewers for AEW. 345. This was the go-home show to All Out. That's why that's really bad. Unfortunately, it was up against WWE Payback. And the last time this happened was actually the previous lowest number in Collision's short history. It was 417,000 viewers because Collision went up against SummerSlam. So it dipped all the way to 417. I was pretty surprised they actually were still in the 400s. I thought they would easily be in the 300s because this was SummerSlam. And there was also other stiff competition. I use that in air quotes. But there was stiff competition from UFC preliminaries and a few other games as well. I think the Yankees were on. Was that the Yankees-Red Sox game, or was that postponed due to weather? I forget, but there was a lot of things going on, and they somehow still drew 470. Now, that's horrible, obviously. But still, I mean, going up against SummerSlam, 417. This one, same thing. They had to go against Payback and a lot of other heavy competition. And they pulled 345,000. So 72,000 viewer drop from their SummerSlam rating. 72,000 viewer difference. So some people are saying, oh, it's because you fire Punk and you lost in the ratings. But, I mean, it's only 72,000 and it was up against WWE's pay-per-view. So I think your audience was always going to hover around that 4 to 5. Once college really starts, your high was going to be 4 to 5 even with CM Punk. So without CM Punk, I guess you could say low 4s. But no evidence is showing us that Punk ever really brought in a lot of viewership extra for AEW. That includes Dynamite, Rampage, and Collision. You had a high benchmark from the beginning, which is a premiere. For instance, CM Punk's debut on Rampage or a couple of Dynamites in the early off with Punk. And then the debut of Collision only debuted at 800 some odd thousand. They didn't even come close to a mil. And then you started to see a drop-off with Punk on Dynamite, a drop-off with Punk on Rampage, and a huge drop-off with Punk on Collision. So there was never any evidence that he was that big of a draw for AEW. A little bit, no doubt. I always said I would give you about 50 to 75,000 more viewers on average that he brought into AEW. And this pretty much coincides with that. 72,000 viewer difference between SummerSlam and Payback's opposition with Collision. 417 against SummerSlam, 345 against Payback. Hopefully you guys are keeping track. So that's what I mean. Numbers tell us everything we need to know. They put a conversation into a factual realm. Instead of just our opinions, we can actually see the facts because numbers give us the facts. And this tells you that even with Punk, you were not going to get that much more than 400,000 viewers. So Collision, the point in all this is that Collision is in a world of hurt right now, just like Rampage has been. And I always said that Collision, adding a third primetime show when your second primetime show, Rampage, needs so much help. It's just the wrong decision personified. That's like, it's honestly like you have a kid and you can't clothe them, you can't feed them, you can barely shelter them, and you decide to have another kid. Well, hold on. What about the first kid? Maybe we should get that in order first, right? And then when everything is settled and everything is going smoothly, then you can have another kid. This was Tony Khan having Rampage. They're barely pulling in 400,000 viewers every week. And then you just say, hey, we're going to bring a Saturday night show. And what happens is you become oversaturated with wrestling content. And there's so much overexposure of the product when it wasn't even bringing in a solid number or that good to begin with. So now you're doing many things average instead of just one or two things really good. Collision is hurting AEW. And it was centered around Phil Brooks. Now that you have him removed, maybe you really got to talk to TNT, TBS, Time Warner, Discovery, and say, listen, I'm so appreciative that you gave us another show, but this is actually hurting our product. Can we maybe concentrate on Rampage or take away Rampage so we can put all our focus on our secondary show, Collision, and not have a third show? Not even WWE has that third show. NXT is literally a separate entity. Only recently did they start bringing some of their main roster stars over there just so they can pop a little bit better of a rating for the TV rights deal. Cash in on that, and then it'll just be all of the younger talents again. But not even WWE does a structure like this, and AEW's only been around a little over 5 years, and they're acting like they've been around 100 years. They're about to have a fourth show. I wouldn't doubt it. Thursday Night Thunder. They'll buy the rights of WCW's Thunder off of Vinnie Mac. There's no stopping that. There's just more. Sometimes quality should be looked at as in higher regards than quantity. Quality over quantity. I understand we live in a world of more. But if the quality isn't there, is it worth anything? Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, he was on this show. I'm not sure if it's still around, but it's called Shark Tank. And it's basically you step in front of a bunch of millionaires or billionaires, and you try to get them to invest in your product. So you created a product or maybe even a business, and you want investment, right? So you step in front of people like Mark Cuban. And you say, I'm looking for $500,000 for 10% of my business. And Mark Cuban says, I'll give you the $500,000, but I want 12% of your business. So he wants more than just 10%. And you're saying, well, Mark, what about 11%? We'll meet in the middle at 11. And Mark says, no, 12. And you say, no, I think 11's better. Mark Cuban always says 40% of a watermelon is better than 100% of a lemon. And I always love that because He's basically telling you, you have nothing right now, and the road ahead of you is going to cost you so much money, and the debt you're going to have to dig out of will take you 20 to 30 years. He's telling you, you can have 100% of this if you say no to me, but it's a lemon. And you have 100% of nothing, basically. If you own something that is meaningless or nobody knows about or cares about, it holds and carries no substance or weight, you have 100% of a lemon. Whereas you can have 40% of a watermelon, but there's so much prestige, so much, or so many people know about and love this product or this business. It holds weight and it has substance, that 40% far outweighs 100% of this other thing. The point is, it's quality over quantity. It is value in worth over something that is worthless and has no value. So Mark Cuban says, you're willing to lose this deal over 1% of ownership of it? 1%, I want 12, you will only give me 11%. And if you say no, you walk away with no money, and your road to get this product out there into the world is much harder and is going to cost you a lot more. For 1%? I always love that. It's quality over quantity in everything, man. You always have to ask yourself, is more the right way to go? This is one of those scenarios where Tony Khan has to go to Warner Discovery and say why I am so thankful and grateful that you've allowed me a third show in primetime. It's actually hurting us now. It's hindering us. And this is a show that was built around Punk, right? Well, he's not there anymore. And I'm not going to act like he was the messiah or savior of AEW, because he's only going to take away about 50 to 75,000 viewers. You can easily get them back if you start telling better stories and make people care about the characters on the show. Punk, we've done the research, man. It wasn't just BC. People that crack numbers. Punk only brought in 50 to 75 other thousand casual viewers. It's a chunk, but it doesn't really move the needle. So that can be brought back, but it starts with condensing your shows into one secondary show, either Rampage or Collision. Make up your mind, because both are pulling in, or going to pull in, on average 300,000 to 400,000 going forward if you're lucky. Condense them, and maybe you can salvage 700,000 to 800,000 every week. Maybe. Guys, I'm going to wrap it up now. I know I said this would be a quicker conversation, but there's so much to talk about with the numbers, because these are issues that need to be solved, because the product is actually suffering because of it. But one more thing I'll leave you with on Collision. Guys, when you say, oh, it's because of other sporting competition, BC, it was stiff competition. BC, it was SummerSlam. BC, it was the UFC preliminaries. BC, college football is coming back. I want you guys to know this and remember this going forward. Hallmark beat AEW Collision this week. A Hallmark original movie. A Hallmark original movie defeated AEW Collision this week. You know, one of those little cheesy love stories on the Women's Network Hallmark. You know, the show, the channel that plays Golden Girls on a loop from probably 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. every night. They defeated AEW. Hallmark. So please, stop with the stiff competition. It's no longer stiff competition. It's just anything and everything is beating it. So stop it. I think Collision has a much better vibe than Rampage, by the way. If I can give, those are facts that I just gave you guys. I'm going to give you my opinion now, right? That's what separates this channel and others. Others have their opinion more than facts. We try to delve in more facts than opinion. But here's my opinion. I like Collision more than Rampage. It has a better vibe, a better feel. If you can get some kick-ass storylines and really make people look that way, they have something on Collision. Rampage is easily missable, unfortunately, man. Just the vibe, the atmosphere. It's Dynamite light. It's just, I don't know. So if you're going to condense it, if you're going to go down to one, I don't know. They got something in how they created Collision. Anyway, big swig of coffee, and we're going to move on to the AEW situation with Punk. The latest. Wait till you guys hear this. Not sure it's even possible, but just in case you haven't heard yet, AEW boss Tony Khan has terminated the contract of CM Punk. Phil Brooks no longer with the company. And if you're Jimothy Cornette, you believe it was not Tony Khan that handed down the final decision, but rather AEW's legal department, and one name in particular. And Jimothy Cornette tells you exactly why he believes it was this person. Now, on the flip side, AEW head of talent relations Christopher Daniels says not so fast. That is unsubstantiated garbage. But while Jimothy Cornette and Christopher Daniels are having their side spat, the rest of the wrestling world is now thinking, was it more than just most of the roster that didn't get along with Phil Brooks? Was it a lot of the backstage suits and ties? A lot of the AEW employees in high positions? Let's go back to what Jimothy Cornette recently said. This is a quote from Jim Cornette. And I should preface this with the Jimothy Cornette will be mentioning Mega Pareca, who is the head of AEW's legal team. So Jim Cornette says, and I quote, "Well, so Tony finally made a decision, or do you think? I thought whoever really calls the shots over there is the one that would make a decision this big. And I'm thinking because Mega Pareca is over there, she's been involved in this since the start because she was one of the people that burst into Punk's locker room along with the Buckaroos and started this whole damn deal a year ago. And we know that Mega is close to the Bucks. She's been the one that was screwing up contracts because she's in charge of AEW's legal team, trying to throw stumbling blocks in the way of Punk and messing around with Ace Steel's employment, etc. She's the one who has been trying to collect evidence for her friends, the Buckaroos, all along. And she's the one who I'm sure had a big hand in whatever other appendage she wanted to put in wording so that a jury, when the lawsuit eventually happens, would go, oh my God, Tony was so scared. Tony was so scared the night that he saw his first fight. It was traumatizing for the boy. End quote. So that's Jimothy Cornette being Jim Cornette. But that is a big accusation to levy down, to say that the removal of the biggest acquisition in AEW's short history, CM Punk, was caused from Chief of Legal Mega Pareca. In fact, it's a statement that Head of Talent Relations in AEW, Christopher Daniels, was actually pretty pissed about. Christopher Daniels, Head of Talent Relations in AEW, says, and I quote, "I've kept my mouth shut about a lot of things in the past year, but the unsubstantiated garbage I've read in the past day about AEW's Chief Legal Officer is an embarrassment to anyone spouting it. Absolutely the last person who should be maligned in this situation." End quote from Christopher Daniels. Christopher Daniels, one of the nicest, one of the coolest dudes I've ever come across and been able to have a conversation with. So to upset somebody like Christopher Daniels, you must have said something really stupid or something really lacking facts. So Christopher Daniels is saying not only is Mega not responsible for anything to do with the removal of Punk, other than doing her job, but she's the absolute last person who would have a final say in removing somebody like CM Punk. So now this has obviously the wrestling world kind of talking. Is it more than just the talent that had a problem with Phil Brooks and vice versa? Phil Brooks did not like most of that roster. Most of the roster did not care or want to be around Phil Brooks. But is it backstage employees or other suits and ties? For Jim Cornette to say that Mega is friends with the Bucks, that's not that hard to believe. The Bucks are EVPs, right? Whether you like it or not, they also literally and or figuratively wear a suit and tie at the end of the day. And that's why I always said being EVPs is going to hinder Cody Rhodes, Kenny Omega, Matt and Nick Jackson. And Cody Rhodes learned the hard way really fast. he did not want anything to do with that EVP role anymore. It was hindering his booking. He was making weird decisions like, I can't go for the world title anymore. It was really weighing on him, and Cody Rhodes had to just get out. Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks have not been booked anywhere near the special booking that they had in Japan, or how special they felt in Japan. They've had moments of decent booking in AEW. Some good matches, obviously. But they have not felt as special as they did in Japan, or when AEW was first starting. A lot of that has to do with their EVP roles. They don't know how to book themselves. They don't want to book themselves too strong, and in the process, they end up booking themselves so weak. It's a fine line of being one of the boys, but being in charge of the boys. It's a very fine line. But to say that Mega is friends with the EVPs, that's not that hard to believe. Suits and ties will try to get along with other suits and ties. So it's not that far out of the realm. So it's still a big statement to say that she was the reason. Now, Mega does wear a lot of hats in AEW. I feel like she's not just legal. She's almost like a spokesperson. She was the one that broke the news that All Out was going to be 1 week after All In. BC first heard from that information from Mega, actually. She was doing an interview. Kind of odd for somebody in legal to not only be doing interviews like that, but also just be giving out company information like that. That's not really that legal. So there's that side of it as well. Mega is more hands-on than just legal. So is there something to the story? Who knows? You guys, as always, sound off. Let me know what you guys think. Do you kind of side more? Maybe there's more to the story and people are in Tony Khan's ear. Or was this straight from Tony Khan? Because he was not just there for this latest brawl. He was involved in it. CM Punk furious with Tony Khan, from the travel arrangements or lack thereof to wrestlers running rogue, according to Punk. And he just was not happy with Tony Khan. Tony Khan being lunged at and being screamed at. And Tony Khan, was he really in fear, or was this just wording that was put out by legal? There's so much. What I can tell you is this was a marriage that had to end in divorce, right? Because now we know if you have the majority of the roster that doesn't want to be around you, if you have the EVPs, which are the kind of the boys but also kind of bosses, if they don't want to be around you, if the legal department supposedly has a problem with you, at what point do you just not want to be there anyway? Or maybe you are the common denominator. Even if everybody is screwing with you, maybe you just got to remove yourself from the situation. Something's not right. If everybody doesn't want to be around you, whether you're the problem or not, you've become the issue. If you're in a place where everybody doesn't want to be around you, you got to take a hard look in the mirror and say, damn, even if I'm doing everything right, I probably shouldn't be here. So I think this is going to be best for CM Punk to leave. I know his contract was terminated. He's fired. He's released. But it would have been a good thing for him to take off anyway. He's miserable there. He told you that many months ago. Maybe he's miserable in pro wrestling. He didn't get along with most of the people in WWE, from the head honchos to a lot of the locker room, and pretty much burned that bridge. He burned the bridge over in AEW. Maybe it's pro wrestling that doesn't make Phil Brooks happy. And we hope that he finds something that will put the permanent smile on his face. That's a plus. But for AEW, it was clear that CM Punk was an anchor to a lot of that locker room, to a lot of now the employees we're hearing. It seems like this was a marriage that had to end in divorce. AEW can now go on and try to become something special. Hopefully down the line be real competition to WWE. And CM Punk can go on and finally, hopefully, find actual happiness. But this was not working. And if this is leaked now to the legal department that doesn't want to be around you and wants you out of the company, when legal has a problem with you, that's an issue, man. So this story just gets even more wild. It sounds like Punk just didn't have a lot of close people in AEW. It sounds like it was an even worse situation than WWE, and these people gave him his firing papers on his wedding day. But Punk told you, of course I'd take the phone call if Paul Levesque called. It's business. If they put the right offer there, of course I would listen to WWE's offer. Punk told you that. It doesn't sound like Punk would go back to AEW at this point. But he did say he'd go back to WWE. Makes you think, man. I truly think, even if it's for a Hall of Fame induction or one last WrestleMania match, I'm telling you this right now, this is a hot take. Punk will be back in WWE to shut down his career. When it all's said and done, he will be back in WWE. Hot take, I know. Let me know what you guys think, man. BC Amplified. Till next time, and there will be a next time. Top guys, we're out.